Right, I want to talk about the hierarchy of controls because this is often misunderstood and it is causing quite a few students to fail both on the NG1 exam and the NG2 practical project because it applies to both. You can get an exam question on the hierarchy of controls and comment using the hierarchy of controls as a framework, comment on how they controlled a particular risk. And then on the NG2 practical project, you have to demonstrate your understanding of the hierarchy of controls in your risk assessment. So you have to use a variety of controls, try and eliminate, try and substitute, and so on. And if you don't do that, chances are you're going to fail. So first things first, let's take a look at the hierarchy of controls. Here it is. We eliminate the hazard, that's the preferred option, substitute, engineering controls, administrative controls and signage, and PPE. So I get a bit frustrated when I see students answering an exam question about the hierarchy of controls and they're not using that language. They talk about avoiding risks. I'm like, avoiding risks is not on the hierarchy of controls. Like, where does it say that, avoid risks? It doesn't say that. It says eliminate the hazard, right? So, which is actually kind of different. Avoiding a risk is not the same as eliminating a hazard. Yeah, think about it. They're not quite the same thing. So, first things first. Let's try to clarify how the hierarchy works. That's the first misconception. And then we'll look at how it applies to exams and projects. So eliminating hazards does not mean tidying things up. Let's be clear. Let's say you're in an office and there's a cable trailing. Let's say the cleaner is vacuuming the floor and there's a trailing cable. You picking up the cable does not eliminate the hazard. Because the hazard is still there. The cable still exists. The vacuum cleaner still exists. It's still in the office. You haven't destroyed it. You haven't thrown it in the bin. Tidying things up doesn't eliminate them. Some idiot is going to just put it back later. That will happen. If you're in a factory and there is a pallet on the walkway, tidying up the pallet and putting it away where it's supposed to be does not eliminate it. You've just moved it and some idiot, when they're busy, will put it back on the walkway. The only way you can eliminate the pallet is to burn the damn thing, and so it never ever comes back. So elimination literally means you destroy it, you get it out of your business, and you ban it permanently. That would be elimination. Now, how could we do that? Well, there are a few different ways of eliminating hazards. One of the ways, this is why it's so hard to eliminate, is that you might have to redesign an entire process or redesign a whole layout. For example, if you've got on your exam a scenario about maintenance engineers working at height, and you have to talk about how they could have done it better using the hierarchy of controls, the thing they're working on at height, could it possibly have been brought down to the ground? If they're, say, lubricating and maintaining machinery that's up high, could you not have a project which brings the machinery down to ground level permanently? I mean, if it's permanently at ground level, then you don't need to work at height anymore in the future. If you're in an office environment and people have to climb up some steps to get to some shelves, can you not just get rid of those shelves and just bring everything down to floor level or ground level, thereby eliminating the need to go up there in the first place? So think about redesigning layouts, redesigning processes, maybe using different technology. So here I've got use of drones. Yeah, if you've got a confined space, send a robot in, send a drone in. I mean, that's pretty common on, say, oil rigs. You know, they don't go in the pipelines. They send pipeline inspection gauges down the pipelines. It's basically a robot. They send it through the pipe. Scans things, welds things, repairs things. There's all kinds of stuff, right? They don't go into the pipelines. So if you've got roof work, send a drone up there with a camera to do your roof inspection. So you can use various bits of robotic technology to eliminate it. And you might even just contract it out entirely. Now, I don't mean contract it out to, say, a contractor on site doing the job. No, that's not eliminating the hazard. I mean, move it to a different business. It's like, we've got this quite dangerous chemical task. Let's get another business in another location to do that task. Or let's say you launder your overalls. You got this whole big giant washing machine, this process where you clean everyone's work clothing. Why don't you just outsource that to a cleaning company in another location? You've eliminated the need to do any laundry. So elimination, quite difficult. Think about redesigning things. Secondly, what about substitution? Well, you swap things. Well, you have to swap things for a safer version, safer equipment or something less harmful. So can we have, say, a safer chemical, a more diluted chemical, something that's less acidic, less irritant, less toxic? Can you buy a power tool that has less voltage, lower voltage? Can you swap a pallet truck for an electric pallet lifter, something which does all the lifting and the moving for you? Although arguably that could be kind of elimination, because to some extent it eliminates the manual handling. But you've swapped it from one side to... Listen, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, it's better. It's better. Can you engineer things out? Now, engineering control is usually a physical device, and it's usually something which works automatically, independent of human beings. Now, human beings do tend to bypass them, so they're not completely reliable. But you could have guarding. As long as you don't take the guard off, it works. You could have automatic guards, fixed guards, interlock guards. You can have light beams and pressure sensors. There's loads of different types of guarding machinery, guarding technology. You could have guard rails. So if you're working at height, can you have a guard rail? Some kind of barrier which keeps you from falling. Can you put something in a box? Can you encapsulate it? Can you put it behind a barrier of some kind? If you're spraying in a spray booth, like can you have booth and extraction equipment? A great big vacuum cleaner which sucks the dust away. That's a physical device, and as long as it's used properly, it's perfectly safe. A chemical cabinet, a fire cabinet. Basically put a barrier between you and the hazard. That's an engineered control. Not all that reliable because people often tamper with them. Administrative controls, now I'll tell you what, on your NG2 practical project, examiners fail people for not putting enough administrative controls. They want to see, on pretty much all of the hazards, to be fair, let's just look at this list of just generic stuff. They want to see all of these really, or nearly all of them. Can you supervise people? Can you communicate better? Can you give them some information? A safe system of work, an SOP? Can you do a briefing? Can you do training, induction training? Can you put a sign on it? A warning sign or a mandatory must-do sign or a prohibition sign? Can you have maintenance? Well, is it equipment? Yes. Well, you can maintain it then, can't you? Can you do a pre-use check on it? Can you check that it's safe before you use it? And then do a monthly or quarterly maintenance check? Yes, probably. Think about all your legally required maintenance checks, your LOLA for examinations, for example, or your inspections of scaffolding if you're in construction. Legally, you have to do a weekly inspection of all of your scaffolding. Can you do health surveillance and health checks? That could be skin checks, lung function tests, hearing tests, questionnaires to people asking them about their health. Can you have an inspection, a housekeeping inspection? Can you have exposure monitoring? Now, by law, you need to do exposure monitoring for some hazards. Like if it's noisy, you need noise exposure monitoring. Have you got levels of vibration, which might be unsafe? You need to do vibration monitoring. So think about what are the measurements and monitoring that you might have to do. Can you have audits where you periodically audit a system? Can you have some kind of fault finding system? Investigations as well, where for violence, for example, a common procedure for violence at work is that you get the staff to report the violent incidents, which then get investigated. Examiners expect to see that on your NG2 if you've got violence issues. And then finally, we've got PPE and all of the raft of PPE. Right, now let's look at the hierarchy of control in relation to an exam question. Let's take this one here. It says, using the general hierarchy of control as a framework. Okay, as a framework. Right, what does a framework mean? Well, when you build something, you might build it with a framework which holds it up. It's part of the structure. So what they're actually saying is, structure your answer around the hierarchy of controls. How would you do that? Well, very simply. Look, you would just type out the hierarchy like this. Start with that. Start with that, and then you're going to start to put, answer 1 there, answer 2 there, answer 3 there, and so on. And just structure it around the hierarchy of controls. So start with the eliminate stuff and make various comments around eliminates, then substitute and say what you've got to say about substitution, and keep going all the way through until you get to PPE and you're finished. So using it as a structure, comment on how the risk of slips in the kitchen can be minimized. Right, so we're commenting here on how can it be minimized. Right, so we might be able to comment on some of the good things that they've done, which is good, but we also need to comment on what they potentially could do. What more could they do? Probably quite a bit more. I haven't read the scenario, but there's quite a bit more which they could do. And this is on about slips in a kitchen. So how about we start with change the floor? Just change the floor. Have some drainage in the floor. You know, this is one of those questions where you might find it useful to go to your slip and trip course materials to find all of the different ways in which we control slips and trips. You might find your course materials, funnily enough, are structured around the hierarchy of controls. So you can actually take a look. So, to eliminate slips and trips, you do this. To substitute it, you do this. You make the floor less slippery, add some grit to it. And then prevent contact. Might be, you know, could be bunding, spill controls, spill trays, drip trays, and then safe systems of work, the administrative procedures. You know, it's all the spill training, the spill cleaning, the inspections, the housekeeping, the maintenance of the floor, all of that stuff as well. And it says, note, you must correspond risk minimization with the general elements of the hierarchy. 17 marks. All right. Well, you're probably going to get an answer just for getting your hierarchy of controls down in the right order. You might get a mark for that. You might get a mark for saying that eliminate is the most effective and PP is the least effective. And you want to then be commenting, giving it 15, 16, 17 comments on all of these. So you might have 3 or 4 for elimination, you might have a number for substitution, you might have some things you can say around the engineering controls and so on. Here are things you could do, and this is where it fits in the hierarchy. I think you're going to get marks for putting things in the right place in the hierarchy. If you put like spillage procedure in eliminate, like no. But I've cleaned up the spillage, therefore I've eliminated it. I'm like, no. You haven't eliminated it because they're just going to spill it again. To eliminate it, you have to eliminate the thing which is being spilled. And you can't do that in a kitchen because every kitchen uses water and oil. So, yeah, there we are. So you can't eliminate that. Now, when it comes to your practical project, you might have this as a hazard. You might have something like spillages and slippery floor in the kitchen. And so, in between these already, what are you already doing and what further controls are required boxes, we're going to need to see a variety of different control measures. And what we might want to see, again, is in relation to the hierarchy, we want to see things like eliminating hazards and substituting hazards. So can we have a safer floor? Can we have a good floor design, which is less slippery? The floor surface is designed to have more grip, and so to reduce the chances of slipping. Can you have some drainage? Can you have a little channel in the middle of the floor where the liquids flow out, maybe? Can you have spill trays or things which catch drips, catch leaks? Can you have storage of things, shelves where there's actually a little spill tray on the shelf? So if you do get a leak from a bottle or a container, the shelf will catch it. Yeah, that's an engineered control. Can you have training people to watch out for spillages, training people to clean up spillages? Can you have maintenance of the floor, inspections of the floor, reporting of slips, reporting of near misses, investigating the slips and the near misses? Think of all of those things before you get to, say, shoes and anti-slip shoes. Think of all things like signage. Signage, barriers, a system where you cordon off spillages while you clean them up. There's all of that type of stuff. And the examiner expects to see all of those things on your NG2 practical project. Get the hierarchy of control in there as best as you can. Don't just use PPE and a small selection of procedures for everything. Just think of all of the procedures. Anyway, hope that's helpful. See you in another one, my friends.